Hi, welcome back to another video on my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my first furniture restoration. This is a main table from a set of three that my nan currently has, and she asked me if I could take a look and fix it. First thing is it's all coming apart, all the glue joints have completely gone, and then this piece of wood here has chipped off from there. I don't know the exact age of this table, but it belonged to my great auntie who died in about 95, I think, when she was 96, and we worked out it's got to be around 60 years old, if not a little bit older. There is no maker's mark on it, so I can't look anything up to find out about it, but going to give it a go and see the outcome. The other thing that my nan asked me to do is try and improve the finish on the top, as it's all faded just here in the middle. So I think the first thing to do is to take the top off and reset the glue joints and glue them up.
So I'm having to do this project inside, at least start it inside, because the heat wave we had has come to an end here in the UK and it is absolutely lashing down with rain outside. So I put down a towel so the top had something soft to sit on, whilst I set about undoing the 4 screws that held the legs to the tabletop. Then I removed the legs, and I didn't realise until I took the legs off that the base was actually, the tabletop, sorry, was actually held together with some strips of felt. So I then set about peeling gently the felt strips off so as not to damage them, so I could re-glue them back in place once the table was glued up. So the 4 parts of the tabletop all lined up.
Now the frame of this table is actually very sturdy. I know it's going to move a little bit because it's got nothing joining it here at the front, but the good thing is there is no repair work that really needs doing to this, apart from a tiny little crack in this corner, but I'll get to that later. Now these pieces are glued with a tongue and groove joint. I don't know if the camera picks it up, just there. So what I shall be doing is putting the glue along the groove and then pushing the joint into it and clamping it up.
So then it was just a matter of squeezing an even amount of glue in each of the grooves and placing the tabletop all together in the correct manner. I did ensure that all the sides were flush to one another before I set the clamps on, and even after I put the clamps on I went back around and ensured that the tabletop was actually flush all the way around. I then wiped up the glue squeeze out and I put a solid piece of wood in the middle so that it didn't curve up or down whilst it was all clamped together. Then re-glued the felt strips in with just some normal Gorilla wood glue. I did it gently as I didn't want the felt to absorb too much moisture and stretch. And then I just went and wiped off the excess glue afterwards.
So with the table now gluing up nicely, I could set about repairing the little chip to the corner of the table.
So then I squeezed a tiny bit of glue into the gap and then just simply clamped it into position.
So now the tabletop is out of the way, gluing up nicely, I can move on to looking at this crack here, which is the only other bit of damage I can see on this table. Now it looks to be, it was done when it was made, because I can't see any other damage along here. I think it's cracked and then been glued and then stained over the top. I was thinking of prising this crack open a little bit and then clamping it up with glue, but I think all I will do, because it is a really strong joint still, I think all I will do is just put some glue on the top and try and get as much into the crack as I can and clamp it up and leave it like that. The last thing I want to do is to prise it open and break it even more.
So again, I just squeezed a small bit of glue on there and tried working it into the crack with my finger, and then applied a clamp just to hold it there overnight. So the next day I then set about removing all the clamps and checking the joins. I was quite happy with how the crack had held up. It had actually pulled it in and seemed to hold quite well. And then I just removed all the clamps from the tabletop, and it glued up perfectly straight, just as I wanted. So then I re-affixed the legs to the tabletop.
Now, to help me with this next stage of the process of scraping off the old varnish, I recently purchased this Irwin card scraper from Amazon. It was only about £5-6, something like that. But I'm just going to assume that it's sharp in the packet, so I could be wasting my time and have to resharpen it, but we'll see how it goes.
So if you're doing any scraping, make sure you fit your dust mask, as it can be harmful stuff, whatever dust you create. So then I set about with the card scraper, trying to scrape back the lacquer on top. However, I think that it had become pretty thin over the years and worn away, and as I started scraping, it was actually taking some of the wood dye off of the joints between the different pieces on the tabletop. I think over the years they had become raised, and this completely changed the job now. So I took a little trip to my local B&Q and purchased the correct wood stain, and when I got back I set about sanding the table down. I was using a 80 grit here to remove the previous stain, and then once I'd got the table completely back, I went over it with a 240 grit sandpaper just to get it all smooth and all the joints flat, and at this point you could hardly see the chip that I repaired. So then this is the first coat of stain that I put on. I had to work it in quite a bit because it's obviously bare wood, so it was a bit. It took to the wood straight away, so it took a bit of time working it all in. But I knew that if I rushed this step, then the whole thing would be ruined. And I did eventually apply 3 coats in total. I think I left it about 30 minutes between coats to go out and restain. This is the third and final coat that I put on, and it was a really good colour match. So then I set about putting some lacquer on after about giving the dye 2 hours to dry. I went over it first of all with the spray lacquer, and then as you can see here I just denibbed everything with 400 grit paper, removed all the dust, and then went back over and sprayed it again. I did put 3 coats of spray lacquer on, also denibbing in between each coat. So So the last job, after the lacquer had a good few hours to dry and harden off, was just to coat it all with some furniture wax and then buff it all off. And this was the finished project. I was really happy with the finish. It was a really good colour match. You couldn't see the chip that had occurred on the tabletop. All the joins went together really well, and overall I was 100% satisfied with this job. My nan was incredibly impressed with it as well, especially as I did this within 2 days of taking the table. Thanks for watching. Feel free to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whichever you prefer. Please comment below and consider subscribing if you haven't already.